Hey everyone, welcome to today's video. In today's live stream, what we're going to be talking about is something really interesting. We're going to be talking about Song of Solomon chapter 4. We're going to be getting into words and thoughts that can save your marriage. So this is going to be the first part of a two-part series. Today we're going to be focusing on Song of Solomon from the perspective of husbands. Tomorrow, God willing, we're going to be getting into Song of Solomon chapter 5. We'll get into it a little bit today, but in full detail tomorrow, and we're going to be hitting it from the perspective of wives, etc. So if this is your first time one of our videos, one of our live streams, my name is Israel, and what we do here on the channel is help you learn the Bible but also live the Bible. So just as is our custom, today we're going to get into the same kind of situation. We're going to be looking at what the Bible actually says. Then we're going to get into like how we can actually apply it. Frandel's here already, says what's up Israel. Hey Frandel, how you doing? God bless. And it's really interesting. I have to put a couple of qualifiers before we really get into the meat of today's session. Hey Mr. Somebody, how you doing? God bless. So the fact of the matter is this, right? So first and foremost, like a couple of qualifiers I'll say is, hey Ecosmios, one thing I'll say first and foremost is this, like this is an interesting topic. I'll put it like this, I'll put it like that, because like we are going to get into similar strategies, similar methods we do on pretty much most videos, right? But then at the same time, it's like it's a really interesting topic because we're dealing with marriage, right? We're dealing with men, we're dealing with women, we're dealing with certain things that many people don't necessarily talk about as much or as openly. And that's part of sort of the problem we're going to get into in today's video. So hopefully this should be beneficial for you as well, right? So again, like I said, this is a two-part series. We are going to be getting into one part today, the next part tomorrow, God willing, hitting it from both perspectives. But then at the same time, right, again, I'll stress this again, this is for marriage, husbands and wives. Now, for those of you who may be watching, you're not married, like, okay, you may be asking yourself, well, can I get benefit from this? The answer is yes. Why? Because if you're not married, Evening Stels, hey, it's a cuss guy, and she's already on it, or she's saying she's single but she'll listen anyway, lol. This, like, so just bear in mind, right, even if you're not married right now, even if you're single, like whatever the scenario is, if you're unmarried, there is likely going to be benefit for you for a number of reasons, right? There's probably going to be benefit for you no matter what your scenario is. If you're at any scenario you are unmarried, right? Why? Because first and foremost, some of you are going to be looking to get married at some point, right? In that case, this is going to be like something really interesting for you, because you're going to be able to look at certain scenarios and say, okay, cool, these are some of the things like I can expect. These are some of the things that I can potentially like think about, which can basically help me in regards to like your progression and all of these kind of things, right? That's the first thing. The second thing, Mr. Somebody says, can he say a fact about Song of Solomon? Not quite yet. Let's stick to the topic, make sure it's on topic. If it's about husbands and Song of Solomon 4, then go for it. If it's not, then leave it for another day, right? But first and foremost, right, like if you're single, if you're not of age to be married yet, etc., all those kind of things, then there's benefit in this. At the same time, if maybe, for example, you're more elderly, or for example, you may not even want to get married, you may want to stay single, right? This is what I'll say, and it's a guy says single series next, LOL. Maybe we'll see what the Lord does, right? So one thing I'll say is, like, even if you don't have intentions to get married, even like whatever the other ways, right, there's people you know that are married, right? There's husbands you know, there's wives you know, there's people out there that can probably benefit from this. So one thing you could do in that scenario is you can share this with a friend, a family member, someone who maybe not even be a friend or family member, who you can actually like benefit and bless in that regard, right? So those are a couple of ways this can actually be of benefit to you in that regard. But either way, like some of the things we're going to talk about are going to get a bit hot, right? And like I'm not gonna lie, like certain times I might be a little bit uncomfortable. Let me not say that, okay? Let me not speak that over myself, but like it does get intense in certain parts. So just for the record, so let's basically see. Mr. Somebody says he's not married also, that's fine. Yeah, like, so yeah, let's just basically get into it. So this is really interesting. Like, Song of Solomon isn't really, I'm not going to say people don't talk about it, people do talk about it, but at the same time, it's like it gets mixed reviews. Some people are like, it shouldn't be in the Bible, like categorically. Some people are like, well, like only married people should read the book. Other people are like, no, like more people should read it. Like for me, from my standpoint, stance, right? If it's from my standing point, if it's in the Bible, read it, right? Obviously, some things will have a lot more physical application to you at the particular time than others. But then at the same time, if it's in the Bible, like I said, it has some benefit to you ultimately anyway. So again, just before we get into the scriptures, let me know in the chat section you can hear me properly. The levels are good. If it's a bit too low, I'll turn it up a little bit. Obviously, you can see me properly. We're going to be talking about words and thoughts that can save your marriage, right? And we have to go with the guys first to a certain degree, because I'm a guy, you have to put it on the guys first, you have to put it on the husbands first. So it's not one of those ones where it's like, oh, you know what, we're going for the women first, right? But obviously the Bible talks about the man being the head of the home, so we want to basically like put it on him first and foremost, and then we'll proceed from there, right? So there's no gender inequality in this one, so to speak. I'm going to basically just be true to what the scripture says, highlight some of the key nuances we see across these pieces of text, right? But also at the same time, like really significant, right? What else do we see? Okay, audio is fine. Yes, great. You can see me clearly. All right, good. All right, so let's do this. All right, so Song of Solomon, like, wow, this is a really interesting book. One thing I will do, which is a bit slightly different, right? Most of you who watch me for a bit of time, you know, just context. I'm big into context, right? We're not going to spend as much time in this 2-part series getting into the predominant, like all of the context of the book, right? I'd potentially, well, let me say that I'd love to get into all of the context in like a video like this, but for the specific topic at hand, we are going to get into context. But the thing I'll say to you is, make sure, regardless, no matter how I basically teach from the Bible, right, I'm always going to be recommending you go back and read it for yourself. You definitely go and get all of the context to make sure what I'm saying is actually true and accurate and all these kind of things. Issachar Sky says she doesn't think she's ever read the book before. She says she skimmed it maybe. And again, so that in itself is at least one reason probably why I'm getting into this stuff, because there's books in the Bible that many people skim, as Issachar Sky has kind of testified to already. Like some people, there's certain books some people have never read, certain books some people, like Issachar Sky saying, have just skimmed, right? So it's really significant that you have a firm grasp across all of the scriptures, because there's definitely reasons why you need to know all different books, right? So what I'm going to say is, first and foremost, Mr. Somebody says, or let me know, I won't get into that right now. Maybe I'll pick that back up later on in the stream. Let's see what the Lord would will. Right, cool. So, Song of Solomon. So, generally, there's going to be different views of what the Song of Solomon is about. Like, again, this is another reason why you need to make sure you're reading this stuff, because some of this stuff is actually really significant, right? But what I'll say is this. One of the things you need to realize is, when you read through the book, as we're going to in today's video, some of it, right, you'll notice some themes. And no matter what you're reading in the Bible, you always want to have like your focus on what's being said, what's being omitted, right? What's being not said, right? Like, what are some of the what are some similarities? What are certain like patterns, certain like codes that you're seeing within what you're actually reading? And the Song of Solomon, okay, and I'll bring this up again. I was probably going to bring this up later on, but I'll say it now as well. Like, when you read through the Bible, any book of the Bible, right, you're not guaranteed to understand it right away. it may take you reading it 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. Certain books you read over and over again, and you will continue. Pretty much every book is like this. You'll continue to learn new things. Why? Because your understanding becomes more fruitful, right? Song of Solomon, like, is similar. So you may read through the Song of Solomon, you may be scratching your head, thinking to yourself, well, okay, like what's going on, right? Like what's this saying? What's that saying? Did they really say that? Did they not say that? Greetings, T-Can. Hope you're doing well. God bless. And these are the kind of things. This is why you have to continue to read it. So, like I said, anyway, we've talked enough to start with. I've been engaged with the chat a little bit. I'll continue to do that as I see good and well, right? But let's basically just start to break down some of the scriptures, right? So generally what you'll find is throughout the book, most of the books, you're going to see a conversation, right? Between a man who generally most people will be like, okay, cool, it's King Solomon, right? The woman is Solomon's wife, and it's a back and forth dialogue. Some people over spiritualize it, or let me not say that. Some people spiritualize the book. Some people say, you know what, like I mentioned previously, this shouldn't be in the book. Other people are like, no, this should be in the book. And like, I kind of like, it's really interesting. Let's just get into the scripture, right? So we're going to talk about Song of Solomon chapter 4. Let's get into it. We're talking about it from the husband's perspective. These are things that I mentioned. I wrote it down as, or the thumbnail says, speak like this to your wife, right? And you'll notice, like, even with the nuances in some of the things I've been doing. The Supreme King says, shalom, everyone. Hope you're doing well. God bless. And this is the thing, right? So it's like, as husbands, as men that are married, right, to a wife, like, as you read through a book like this, like, you can, like, the scripture talks about how the scripture is a mirror, right? So it's like you can, or the law is a mirror. Like, you can look at what we're going to read and be like, okay, like, how do I line up to this? And one thing you might realize is you might see yourself in a position where you're actually like realizing that, you know what, you are just like, you thought you were something, but you really aren't. Like, it's not, you're not as good as you thought you were. And that's how I've kind of felt myself personally reading through like Song of Solomon recently and studying it a few times and trying to go in it and out around it and all these kind of things. Realizing that, you know what, I thought I had some words, but it's like when you start comparing with someone that seems to have a strong command of the language, of a language, ultimately with his wife, it's like, you're like, okay, cool. So these are the kind of things. And the fact of the matter is, if you get the point I'm trying to make in regards to what we're going to cover today from a husband's perspective, you'll realize that it's like, imagine if this was how your marriage was like what would it be? Like, would it be more likely or less likely to run into problems? Would it be more likely or less likely to like deteriorate over time, right? So the funny thing about this is we'll get a lot of lessons. We should be able to garner a lot of things from this whole scenario, but then at the same time, like I don't want you, like, this is something that is to be enjoyed. Like ultimately all scriptures, right? All scriptures are there for enjoyment and learning and edification, right? And exhortation, etc. So let's jump into it. We're looking at it from the husband's perspective. Again, like I said, this really simple context I've given you, that you've got a conversation going back and forth. So you'll notice within the text, certain things, certain titles, certain statements that the husband continues to say, certain titles, certain statements the wife continues to say, right? And when you think about it from this perspective, it's like, it kind of helps you understand like the flow of the book for the most part, ultimately. So Song of Solomon chapter 4, this is, we're picking up with the guy speaking, right? So let's basically get into it and let's take it away, right? So this is where we're at. So where we're reading from starts by the scripture talking about, it says, behold, thou fair, thy love. Sorry, behold, thou fair, my love. Behold, thou fair. Thou dove's eyes within thy locks, thy hair as a flock of goats that appear from Mount Gilead. Now, this is how we're opening it up today, right? Now, it's actually really interesting for a number of reasons. One thing I want you to highlight, again, just think about what he's saying like he's talking about specific like features of his wife, right? But notice that like he's not just going to be speaking about every feature. Certain features he'll miss out. For what reason? Well, we don't necessarily know, but I'll give you at least one reason as we continue as to why this actually might be significant, right? So he's basically starting, right? And some people are going to look at this and it's going to get like more like serious, more deeper and deeper and deeper, right? So he starts by just talking about, look, you're fair, like you're beautiful, right? And then he goes on to talk about how he starts first talking about her eyes. Her eyes are like doves, right? Now it's interesting. He's talking about eyes, and if you think about it like this, right? From a husband's perspective, you start weighing up, okay, cool. Like, ask yourself this question. When was the last time as a husband you talked about, like, you complimented your wife's eyes, right? The reason I highlighted this as, like, speak like this to your wife is because a lot of women, right? Let me just say this. Generally, like, women like appreciate a lot when you compliment them, right? So if I say certain things to my wife about how she's looking and all these kind of things, like, she'll like it, right? And notice, like, you'll see over the two parts, today and tomorrow, God willing, right? Just the nuance, the difference, ultimately, because there's certain things generally a woman will like, there's certain things generally a man will like, and you'll see the nuances between the two scenarios. But he basically starts by talking about her eyes. He says her eyes are like doves, right? Now, most people know that, look, a dove ultimately is like a very nice bird, like it's a beautiful bird. So he's basically comparing her eyes to a set of doves, right? Now he goes on to the locks. He now goes from her eyes to her hair. And he basically starts talking about how, like, her locks of her hair as a flock of goats that appear from Mount Gilead. Now, one thing you'll notice about this book, as you read it more and more, as your understanding of other places in the Bible gets even more significant, is like certain things that are being mentioned, right? So notice this. He's talking about the locks of her hair is like a flock of goats that appear from Mount Gilead. Why is this significant? If you go back to the old previously in the Old Testament, right? The 5 books of Moses, those time periods, when the Israelites were going into the promised land, before they crossed over the River Jordan, they were able to capture lands from people basically that were basically fighting against them. And 2.5 tribes, you got Reuben, you got Gad, and you got half of the tribe of Manasseh, ultimately basically just said, look, we're going to stay on this side. 9.5 of you other tribes go on the other side, right? And the reason it says, which I think is really significant in regards to this context, is it says they wanted to stay in this region because they had much cattle, right? And ultimately this was a good place to rear cattle. So when you are reading this, these are the kind of things you just have in your mind, right? He's likening this to her hair to a flock of goats that appear from Mount Gilead. So this is ultimately one way you can look at this. One way I kind of perceive this is he's to be saying, look, your hair is like the best, where like the land, Gilead, right? That's in that region where the best flock were, the best place for flocks, right? Some of you may not understand like the nuance of what is actually being said. That's okay, but just understand like how he is navigating. It's like you can take a lot of these things and you can basically, like, from a husband's perspective, like, how's the word, like, modernize them ultimately to things that maybe if I said to my wife, look, your locks or your hair is like a flock of goats that appear from Mount Gilead, she may not know like any significance, like what's Israel talking about, like, is that even a compliment? But if I turned around and said something else more modern, she would like, okay, cool, I can understand, I can dig that, etc., right? So think about it from that perspective, and you'll see throughout this certain subtle allusions to things like Solomon like was in and around. So that's really significant, right? First and foremost. So he's gone from eyes, he's now gone to her hair. Now what does he go to next? And this is a really significant one, because I was thinking to myself, and I think I saw something a minute ago. What was it? T-Can says, yes, women love compliments. LOL. Right? And it's true, right? If most women will basically admit it, right? This is the next thing I wanted to highlight first and foremost. And this is, I asked this question previously, when was the last time you did this? And these are certain scenarios where you start to realize just like how powerful this is, right? So he says, thy teeth. Yes, he actually compliments her teeth. He says, thy teeth like a flock shorn, which came up from the washing, whereof every one bare twins, and none barren among them. Right? So notice this. Like, when was the last time as a husband you complimented your wife's teeth? Like, imagine how deep this guy's going. Like, he's like, today, like, I remember the last time I gave my wife a compliment about her teeth. It was actually, funny enough, it wasn't related to this. I don't believe it anyway. If I remember correctly, it wasn't related to this, but it was probably like maybe a few weeks ago, maybe like a month ago. And I was like, she always just says like, oh, you know what, when she goes to the dentist, they always say like, yeah, she's got nice teeth. And I'm always like, okay, cool. And it was like this period where I'm mentioning, right, a month ago, whatever it was, I remember like looking at her teeth, and I was like, and I just said to her, I was like, oh, you know, you actually do have some nice teeth. But I wasn't like going this level, like your teeth are like this. But like, notice, like, again, we'll say this continually, right? Like, women, right, your wife will love it when you compliment her, but also like when you're not, I'll say original, but obviously the same person who's ultimately behind Song of Solomon is behind Ecclesiastes, right? Who says, look, there's no new thing under the sun, right? So we can say, look, we're complimenting our wives in these original ways, but all of this stuff's been done one way, shape, or form. But ultimately, it's original from the husband's perspective to your wife. Why? Because it's used to, right? Used to on one. So from that perspective. So you think about it from that perspective, he's going deep saying, look, your teeth are like a flock. Now, he doesn't even stop there. He says, look, not just any ordinary flock, like a flock that's been trimmed, right? And not only trimmed, like their wool has been trimmed, but also washed, right? So this is fresh, clean, fresh white wool, white. Now, he goes deeper. What does he say? He says, look, whereof everyone bear twins, and none barren among them. So look, like, this is a full set, like, of nice teeth, right? If you're just going to take this from a standard, loose interpretation, right? So notice that. And already it's like, when I kind of highlighted and said, look, well, we're talking about words and thoughts that will save your marriage. Imagine thinking about these kind of things, like when you're talking to your wife and you're trying to think about your wife and you're saying like, okay, cool, like how can I compliment my wife? Like, let me think about just complimenting her, but not something that is just like she knows you really didn't put any thought into it, but really is like something that she knows like you actually mean first and foremost, and you're not lying, but also something you appreciate. And if these are the kind of things, like as husbands, we're saying to our wives on a regular basis, like, how often does someone compliment you and you get angry about it? That's a question. Let me know in the chat box. Excuse me. How often does someone compliment you? This, like, think about this. And if we've got some wives in here, like comment in it, like, if you want to share it and let it be even more interactive from that perspective. Like, how often does someone give you a compliment? How often does your husband compliment you and you're like, don't compliment me, like, I don't want to compliment, especially from a woman's perspective, right? Like, you want those compliments, right? Because it means, what does it mean when a husband is complimenting his wife? It means that he obviously loves her, most likely he appreciates her, he's thinking about her, and when he's going next layers, like, it means he's actually thinking more on a deeper level. I can say, you know what, I can wake up in the morning and say to my wife, look, you're beautiful, and that's cool. But if I'm like you are like the way your beauty is, it's just like the sunrise. Like, do you get what I'm saying? Like, it's a little bit more personable. It's a little bit more thoughtful. And these are the kind of things they like, right? And if you know these are the kind of things your wife likes, like these are the kind of things that will boost your marriage in multiple different ways. Again, this is a short 2-part marriage series, just for the record. But again, we've talked about this previously in regards to this series, right? If you're not married, if you're not at that stage in your life where you're getting married yet, take notes, right? It doesn't mean that once you get married, these things are just going to happen straight away. But imagine if, like, you're considering marrying someone and they're just not doing, like, they're just viewing the complete opposite of these kind of things. They're not necessarily speaking love and blessings and all these kind of things over you. They're speaking hatred and, like, just disgusting things over you. I wouldn't necessarily say that would be a straight reason not to potentially marry that person, but it's at least, like, potentially a sign that, you know what, like, does this person really love me? Is that person really ready for these kind of scenarios? These are the kind of things you have to consider when it comes to this, right? E-Cosmos is saying, what's the saying? Happy wife, happy life. Yeah, some people say that, right? I'm not sure I fully co-sign to that, but it is generally a popular statement going back quite a few years. E-Cosmos also says no missing teeth, and she's got the teeth emoji. And it's like, yeah, it's like, imagine, like, those are the kind of things that some people be looking at and they'll just be like, yeah, like, that's a great compliment to have, right? What else do we have? What does he say next? Now he goes even deeper. So we've gone from, what did we start with? Eyes. Your eyes are like doves, right? Then he says her hair. Then he goes to her teeth. Now he continues and he goes to her lips. And he says, thy lips like a thread of scarlet, and thy speech comely. So he mentions the lips briefly, and he says, look, your lips like a thread of scarlet. But then he goes even deeper and says, look, and your speech is comely. So not only is he complimenting her lips, right? And notice, like, he's got the whole, he didn't just say, oh, look, your face looks good today, or like, your head looks good. Man is going part by part, like eyes, hair, lips. Then he's saying, look, teeth. He's saying even the words are lovely, are beautiful, etc. Right? So notice this. He's working in and around, and we've gone through a little bit of the text so far today, and like, he's still on the head. Can you imagine? Like this is the the basics of what he's actually talking about, right? Now, as he continues, what does he say? He says, thy temples, right? The temples on her head are like what? A piece of pomegranate within thy locks. So again, he's talked about different things. He's now gone to the temples. Like, imagine, we thought, or let me speak for myself. I was making a big deal about the teeth compliment. He's gone to the temples. Like, can you see, like, the level of compliments that we're getting here? Like, the temples. Like, some women probably thinking, like, some wives will be out there thinking, well, have they ever been complimented about their temples? But he's going, and he's not only stopping there. He's like, look, your temples are like pomegranates, like a piece of a pomegranate, right? He's likening it to a fruit, right? Which I think is really interesting. Say, cool. Frandel M has got a couple of laughing emojis, and he says, yo, he can't take Solomon's compliments. Like, yeah, like, I kind of mentioned this already, or mentioned this as it goes on. It's like, he is going deep to a certain level that many, let me not say most, right, but at least many people like are not even thinking on these levels, right? Many people are not thinking on these levels, but this is like the significance, the seriousness of what he's getting to. And these are the kind of things that are standout-ish, right? These are the kind of things that stand out. A guy that's talking like this will definitely stand out, right? Like, a wife will remember these words. And not only will she remember these words, she'll tell her friends, right? She'll potentially tell family. Like, these are the kind of things which I think are really significant ultimately, right? Now, let's see as we continue. What does he say next? He's talked about the lips. He's talked about her temples. Now he comes away from the head, and now he's going to get to the neck, right? And what does he say? He says, thy neck like the Tower of David. Now, some women will be looking like, some wives be reading this like, what? Why is he comparing my neck to a tower? Like, but what does he say? Notice this. He says, builded for an armory, whereon there hang 1,000 bucklers, all shields of mighty men, right? So what's he saying here? Like, David's armory, David was a man of war, right? We know that. David was a man of war. He went out, he won many battles. So what kind of armory do you think he had? His armory was secure, was a place where the scripture talks about, what does it say? It says, look, where would hang 1,000 bucklers, okay, and all shields of mighty men, right? So he's likening this scenario here to a tower, the Tower of David, right? Which has got all of his armory. And you think about it from that perspective, it's like, that's a very powerful compliment, because ultimately he's saying, look, your neck is strong, your neck is secure. Again, like, we've talked about the teeth, we've talked about the temples, now we're talking about a neck. How often, right, wives, do you hear your husband complimenting your neck? Oh, like, your neck is just so good, your neck is this, your neck is that. It's like, the more and more we read these kind of things, let me speak for myself, the more and more I've read some of these things, the more and more I've realized it's like I need to do better. Like, and I mentioned this previously, like, I thought I was good, but like there's a lot more levels you can dial up to make this even like more significant, make the compliments like hit home even more. And it's really about just expression. And the more you begin to express yourself with your wife as a husband, right, like the deeper, like ultimately, we've said this multiple times, women like the compliments. A wife would loves her husband's compliments, but also at the same time, right, like the deeper compliment a husband gives a wife is ultimately, from their perspective, like deeper and deeper levels of intimacy. Why? Because husbands can just say anything. We've talked about this already, like, oh, you look good. Like, anyone can say that. But the more and more you go into these things, the more and more a wife will look at her husband and realize that, okay, cool, like what he's saying, like he may not just be saying these things, like these are things that he likely really means. Like, and she'll be saying, like, does her husband really think these things about her? Like, and as a wife thinks more and more of those things, as she begins to believe more and more of these things, that this is exactly how her husband thinks about her and feels about her, like ultimately the relationship goes up, right? And things continue to go good. Now, again, I think this is a good place to basically highlight and say this, like, look, at the end of the day, don't get carried away with just saying things that sound nice, ultimately. Like, remember, this isn't, Ecclesmere says, Solomon left no stone unturned, no body part left behind. And it's interesting, like, that's a powerful comment. What I'll say is this, right? Remember, Song of Solomon isn't the only book in the Bible. There's multiple other books. So we take this, and as we're reading through it, today we're reading from this from a perspective of a husband, right? And just words and thoughts he can have towards his wife in order to save his marriage, in order to boost his marriage, in order to like sustain the marriage, right? And keep the fire burning, as they say, keep it strong. Like, we don't just take this as a vacuum. And I'm not even saying Solomon is doing this, but ultimately the thing you need to consider is, like, don't feel that you have to just say things. Don't lie, don't deceive, right? I mentioned this previously. There's certain things that he doesn't mention. Why didn't he mention them? Did he not mention them because... I said I'll give you one reason. One reason he may not have mentioned them is because he may have not had anything, for example, good to say. Like Solomon might just have really liked her neck. He might have really liked her teeth, right? He might have really liked her temples. But there may have been things about his wife that he necessarily maybe like didn't like as much as these other things. And he didn't necessarily like, you know what, let me just make something up. Like certain times, like keeping your mouth closed is as good as like a compliment, because certain times you may open your mouth and say something like negative, say something that might be harmful, and it's like you may consider and say, you know what, maybe you shouldn't have said that, right? So he doesn't mention everything, and this doesn't like I'm not going to be telling you, look, go out as a husband and just start lying to your wife and just saying anything. Like, no, like think about like good things that you like and appreciate as a husband about your wife and mention those things, right? Like you can write a list out and say, look, these are some of the things I really like about. And again, from this perspective so far, we're just talking about physical appearance, right? We're talking about physical appearance. And I guess ultimately what we talked about as well is we mentioned her speech, how she talks, right? So that will go just a little bit another layer deeper in regards to physical appearance. So you think about it from that perspective, like it's completely different. Like it's another layer ultimately. But think about it from that perspective. That's what he's saying. So he's complimenting all of these different places. Certain things he may leave out, certain things he may emphasize even more. But if you think about it from that perspective, it makes it even more significant, right? If you think about it from that perspective. So let's keep going, right? Let's see. What do we have next? Let's get back to the scriptures. And what does he say next? Now imagine, the reason this is significant is now we get to some of the general things that most men today will talk about, right? This is an example. He's going to talk about her breast, right? Now, most people, a lot of men, this will be one of the first things they talk about. There's certain things in today's day and age are the first thing, oh, we'll talk about this or we'll talk about that. Now notice, I don't want to say the game Solomon's working with, but notice like how Solomon approached this particular piece of text we're talking about. He had scattered her head with compliments and then went to her neck, talked about how her speech is comely. And now, after all of those compliments, now he's getting to some of the things that many men today, many husbands will compliment about their wife. Oh, your breasts are this, etc. And most husbands are going to say stuff like, well, oh, like your breasts look nice, or your breasts are big, like whatever it is, right? Now, but notice this. What does he say? He says, thy two breasts like two young roes. Okay. So a roe is like a deer, like a gazelle, right? What does he say to add more significance to this? There are twins, right? And it's like, so he's now talking about, look, his wife's two breasts are identical ultimately, right? Which feed among the lilies. So the deer that feeds among the lilies, like, he's giving you all of this context, right? And what does he say? He continues, until the daybreak and the shadow flee away, I will get me to the mountain of myrrh and to the hill of frankincense, right? So he's here talking about, look, I've talked about your face, all of these different things, your lips, etc., right? These are some powerful words, powerful emotive words that we can see here. And what does he say? He's like, look, your two breasts are like two young roes that are twins. So it's like, imagine, like we talked about certain scenarios, right? Certain things that husbands may say to the wife, oh, like your breasts look nice or this. Like, when's the last time a husband, like, and this is for the husbands, right? When's the last time you said to your wife, look, like wife, like your breasts are identical. They're perfect. Like they're like this. Like we're getting into now similes and metaphors. Like we're not just keeping it on a literal basis, right? We're going to another level, right? So if you think about it from this perspective, like, notice just the nuance, and notice the specificities of the things he's mentioning in this text. He's being very specific. Now, some of us have already, like, we've had some of the emojis and all these different kind of things in the chat. Like, some of us will probably be thinking like yeah, like, this guy's too much. Fandel made a comment like that, and it's like, again, like, it may be interesting to, like, read them, but then at the same time, it's like, imagine it, like, do you feel like shy or embarrassed, or like, yeah, shy is a good word, basically, to say these kind of things as a husband to your wife? Like, if you are, like, why is that? Like, obviously Solomon's saying these things, right? Like, as a husband that loves his wife, he should, like, be showering her with compliments all the time. And it may be a bit, like, weird and, like, funny, like, to a certain degree, for us to be talking about these kind of things, but these things shouldn't be, like, weird, or, like, you shouldn't be shy to say these things as a husband to your wife, because this is your wife, this is your partner, right? This is the person you're supposed to be spending the rest of your life with, etc., as a team. So these are things that like, really, like, show you the significance. Okay, so you think about it from that perspective. What does he say next? As we continue, he says, let's bring the scriptures back up. What does he say? He says, okay, we can say what? He's, like, taking a little break, right? Starting again what he said. Thou all fair, my love, right? He said this to start, right? She's fair, she's beautiful. And he called her his love already. Now, notice this, which I think is really interesting. Like, from a husband's perspective, right? With, like, a wife, the fact of the matter is, you have to say to yourself, well, like, there's no harm in repeating certain things to your wife. Why? Just because you've given your wife a certain compliment before, it doesn't mean she won't like it a second time. Because when you think about it from this perspective, it's like, again, wives love compliments from their husbands, right? So if you say, like, imagine, so let me give you this example. This is an example probably most husbands that are here watching today or watching on a replay can relate to, and definitely most wives, right? So let's say, for example, your wife, she does her hair, right? She does her hair a certain way, and you're like, okay, like, before you may have said something like, oh, you know what, darling, like, babes, your hair looks great. After, like, going through a Song of Solomon, like, series, you may be saying something on another level, right? Like, your hair looks like this, and it reminds me of this, and it reminds me of that, etc. But notice, you give her a compliment. Let's say in a month's time, in 2 months' time, she does her hair again, right? Or whenever. Women will probably be better served to give me, like, the desired timeline of doing her hair, etc. Then this time, you don't give any compliment. Like, do you think that your wife may not be looking at you or thinking, well, the husband complimented her last time, why didn't he compliment her this time? Is there something wrong with the hairstyle this time, etc., 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 right? So just because you compliment her in one way and you compliment her about something specific doesn't mean you can't compliment again, right? So him saying to his wife at this point before where we started, she's beautiful, and saying it again, like, there's nothing wrong with that, so just bear that in mind. Now, what does he say, which I think is really profound? He says, look, no spot in thee, right? So what's he saying? Like, in his eyes, his wife is perfect to him, right? Now imagine, like again, and I'll probably say this multiple times over and over again, like, husbands, when was the last time you told your wife that she's just perfect for you? Now, this is something, it's interesting. I'm not going to go into too much detail about this, but I remember like me and my wife kind of have this conversation from time to time. And we've realized this more and more as time goes on, like in ways, well, let me speak for myself anyway, okay, just keep it 100% specific, right? So I'll just speak for myself. There's certain times that I've realized how the wife God blessed me with, like, really was really what I needed, really tailor-made for my particular needs, in the sense of certain things that I know I needed to have, whether it be like physical, but then also at the same time, right, certain things that I may have needed spiritually, right, to help me progress. When a man and a woman come together, right, God's desire is for them to fit perfectly. Like, you can use the example of a jigsaw puzzle, but then at the same time, when you think about it from that perspective, like, as they complete, there's certain things that are filled in by this piece, and there's certain things that are filled in by this piece, so they connect perfectly, right? So there's certain things a husband lacks that when you get married, a wife can help you complete those things. There's certain things a wife lacks that when they get married, a husband can help her complete those things. And I realized more and more, like I know what God was doing, like in my particular scenario, because again, like I said, there's certain things in my life that I can see how she is a straight blessing to me in those regards. Things that I may have not even thought or considered at the time, right? I may have thought, well, I need or want something like this. And God's like, this is what I'm giving you. And you've realized later on. But imagine if you went out looking, which many people do. Many people go out looking themselves and say, okay, look, like, I'm going to go and try and find someone that I want. Someone, like, in the sense that someone that I think is good for me, right? God says it in the New Testament. Like, Jesus says, ultimately, the hairs on our head are numbered. God knows the hairs of the number of hairs on our head. We don't even know the number of hairs on our head. So who do you think could really pick a better wife for you as a husband? Like, you or God? Like, God ultimately, right? We have to put our trust in him though, in order to actually make these kind of things a reality. Let's keep going, right? Now, what does he say? We've talked about Mount Gilead previously, right? And some of the kind of allusions in regards to Gad, Reuben, half tribe of Manasseh, right? And them having much cattle and dwelling in that place because it was a good place for cattle, etc. From my standpoint. Now, what does he say? He says, come with me from Lebanon, spouse, with me from Lebanon. Look from the top of Amana, from the top of Shinar and Hermon, from the lions' dens and from the mountains of the leopards. Let me read that again. He says, look from the top of Amana, from the top of Shinar and Hermon, from the lions' dens, from the mountains of the leopards, right? So again, a couple of things that are quite nuanced here, which, again, like I said, the more and more you read this book, the more and more, like, you actually see a lot of, within what's going on, a lot of, like, the nuance and the application to other places around the scripture. Why? Because he's mentioning things that, if you've read Deuteronomy, they kind of fill in these gaps, right? These are specific places he's talking about, which are similar to what we talked about earlier in regards to, like, the whole Mount Gilead area, all those kind of things, right? But notice, he's saying, come with me from Lebanon. How is this? Why? One reason this is significant is because if you go and look around and see some of the things that Solomon did, the scripture talks about Solomon obviously building the temple. It talks about him building different things. One of the things he talks about is he talks about building what the scripture references as the forest in Lebanon, right? So it shouldn't be a surprise that he continues to talk about Lebanon in this particular scenario. One, because Lebanon was a beautiful place and had certain, like, great characteristics, as you'll see. Like, it was clearly a place that smelt good, had certain, like, great resources, but also it was a place where, like I said, he built this place that is referenced multiple times in the scripture as the forest of Lebanon, right? But what does he say? He continues by saying, thou hast ravished my heart, my sister, spouse, right? Thou hast ravished my heart with notice this, with one of thine eyes. So look, remember he was talking about before previously, and you'll see this linkage again multiple times, right, through this whole scenario. What does he say? He said previously her eyes are like dove's eyes, right? Now he's saying, look, you've ravished him. His heart is ravished by her, right? But then he goes on and says, look, like, his heart is ravished with one of the eyes. So before he was talking about, look, two of your eyes are like doves. Now he's saying, look, one of your eyes, just one of your eyes is ravishing him. And he says, with one chain of thy neck. This is an allusion to something he mentioned previously, before we actually read in today's video. So again, as you read the whole book, it's a short book. You can read within an hour, ultimately. But ultimately, like, there's nuance all around the book specifically. But notice just the texture in what he's saying, how deep he's going. And he says, look, how fair is thy love, my sister, my spouse. Okay. How fair is thy love, my sister, spouse. How much better is thy love than what? Than wine. So again, he's going back, going deep. Look, like, your love is more precious to him than the appreciation he has of his wine, right? And the smell of thine ointment than all spices. So your love, he's saying, is what? It's better to him than wine, right? Now again, modernization. Your wife, as a husband, will know some of the things that you hold, right, in the highest regard. There's certain things, right? You may be a tech guy, and your wife may know, okay, cool. Like, hubby likes the latest tech, right? An example could be, well, like, okay, like, your love is greater than the latest, like, tablet device, or the latest, like, high-end computer, or the latest game console. Like, these are the kind of things that we can use and modernize them, right, to specific scenarios, like right now. Again, a wife will know, probably better than most people, if not everyone, okay, not obviously not including God, right, the things that a husband will hold dearest to him. And if he begins to incorporate these kind of things into the scenarios, again, what I talked about previously, she can look at some of these scenarios and say, okay, well, I know this guy must be serious, because he's saying, look, this love is even deeper than this, and I know he really appreciates this, so he must really appreciate me, right? So these are the kind of things you can think about and just see the nuances in them, and see just how powerful ultimately they actually are. Okay, so let's continue and see what he says next. Okay, what do we see? We see, he says, and he compliments it. I didn't mention this in much detail, right? But what does he say? He says, the smell of your ointments are better than all spices. So you smell better to him than any other fragrance. Like, you know, there's women really appreciate a scent, right? A fragrance generally. Not all of them, but stereotypically, right? And he's here saying, look, your smell is better than all of these other smells, right? You specifically. And if you think about it from that perspective, it's like, these are not only things that she will like, but these are also things that your wife will understand. Okay, so it's like, I don't know some of like the most popular fragrances out there. I know certain fragrances my wife likes, and it's like, I could say, okay, look, like, you smell better to me than all of these things. Like, do you get what I'm saying? And these are just the kind of things that, again, these can all be nuanced. These can all be much more personable, but it's a stance that a husband, like a template, ultimately, you could look at and see how this guy who's talking specifically about his wife and how he appreciates her, how he appreciates her body, how he appreciates how she talks, how he appreciates all of these different kind of things. And it's like, these are things for you to basically go and take away. Now, again, as we go through these kind of things, again, we're sticking to this from just a very basic level. a very literal level, right? It's just a husband and a wife. There are, again, I mentioned this previously, there are other views on this. Probably get into this based on some of the questions that will come in. Certain questions I've already seen already after I could basically get through this. But then at the same time, right, just understand this, like a husband, like, do you think these kind of things will be beneficial to a husband who doesn't know how to like speak well or nicely to his wife? Like, yes, these are the kind of things that a woman or wife will appreciate from a husband as he says these things to her more and more, as he like learns how to put words together in a personable manner directed at his wife. She'll appreciate his words much more. She'll appreciate the compliments. And again, we talked about this previously, like, what wife doesn't like compliments from her husband? Even if there are scenarios like that, it's like, you just continue, like, obviously pray about those scenarios, but also continue to speak about the positive things, the nice things that you see from her, and don't go to the standpoint on try and deceive yourself just to say, look, there's nothing nice about your wife. Every wife has something good about her, and those are the kind of things you focus on, right? And again, we talked about this already. You can repeat the same things. There's nothing wrong with saying every single day, look, I love you like this, or you look like this to me, etc. Right? Because that is in many cases better than no compliment or a bad compliment, etc. Right? Now, what does he say next? He goes back. He's talking about the lips, right? He talked about the lips previously. What did he say previously? He said her lips were like a thread of scarlet, right? And that was cool, but maybe it wasn't cool enough for Solomon that he's going to another layer deep now. He's going, look, let me come back and compliment these things again, because yeah, you can say the same thing over again. Yeah, you're beautiful, you're fair. He can say that twice, but look, I can talk about the same body part of his wife, but now speak about it in a different way, even more deeper, okay? Even more like beautifully. And what does he say? Thy lips, O spouse, drop the honeycomb. And he says, so he's likening it to honey, right? Something sweet, something really pure. Honey is really good for you, but really sweet as well, right? Natural sweetness. It's not an artificial, okay? He's not talking about, what can we talk about? People can post some artificial bad sweeteners out there in that we know today. Not, let's say for example, like a maltodextrin, not a, what's the other one, the popular one, high fructose corn syrup, honey, right? One of the most like precious natural sweeteners out there. He's saying, look, her lips are like that. And then he says honey, right? And milk under thy tongue, right? Now, again, notice this. Honey and milk and honey, right? This, for anyone who has understanding of the Old Testament, at least the first 5 books of Moses, like, this was mentioned multiple times. The Israelites are going into a land flowing with milk and honey. That was a way of showing that, look, the land was vibrant, was precious. And he's saying these things about her lips, right? And in regards to what's under her tongue. So these are the things that he's saying in her mouth. And ultimately, like, we're getting a bit more intense, right? But notice, if these are the things that are nice, natural, good, and he's saying, look, these are things most people like, and he's talking about her lips and under her tongue. Like, obviously, he's basically talking about how the fact that, like, he ultimately wants to, like, enjoy these things, right? And again, I've talked about this previously. You may, like, feel a bit weird reading these kind of things, but these are things that you have to become if you're not at this particular point yet in a marriage, right? With a husband and a wife. These are things that you need to be able to say to your wife, and not necessarily feel like, oh, did I really just say that? Did I just really compliment her like that? Like, these are the kind of ways you should look at your wife, not in a way that you're looking down at your wife or you're feeling like your wife is insignificant or just like trash. You should be building your wife up with compliments and love on a day-to-day basis. Why? Because ultimately, I'll bring that up later anyway. just for the record, what does he say to kind of wrap this part up? He says, and the smell of thy garments like the smell of Lebanon, right? So people know today there's certain places that smell really nice, right? Again, this is the scenario you can use. Like, look, we talked about, what did he say? Her ointments are better than all of the spices. That's what he said previously. Now he's saying, look, the smell of your clothes. Like, can you imagine? A husband's normally going to say to his wife, like, yeah, that dress looks nice, or this looks nice. Your clothes, like the way you put yourself together today, look nice. He's talking about the smell of the garments. Like, I don't know. Obviously, I'm not a wife, so physically, like, so I can't understand, like, the kind of things like a wife would be thinking as a husband would be saying these things. But like, I'm just saying, like, imagine complimenting your wife's the smell of her clothes. Like, these are things that give us insights, right? Like, these are things that give us insights as to certain things that a wife likes, right? We may think that there's certain things they like, but we're getting even more explicit, better examples of things they will actually like. Look, like the smell of her fragrances, the smell of her clothes, right? Specific body features, all of these kind of things, right? So just notice that. Any guy who says he's a Christian and says, look, he doesn't know how to compliment his wife, like, this is a book you can send them to, you can direct them to, and say, look, like, here's a blueprint. Like, take your pick. Teeth, eyes, temples, neck, hair, like, what else? Like, her speech, her lips, her tongue, her just look altogether. All of these different kind of things, right? If you think about it like this, now we get to, we've touched on certain things. Like, now we start to get to some of the more intense, really, really intense things, right? Which, again, this is for husbands and wives, right? Excuse me. I can't co-sign this for any other situation. Sorry. Well, I'm not sorry, in fact. I can't, right? These are the things that God ultimately has set up to be between a husband and his wife, right? Other people can try and like duplicate the scenario, but ultimately you just have to understand and know that that isn't going to be God's will for those scenarios, right? God intends for men and women to enjoy benefits as husband and wife, and not just as partners and all these different kind of things, right? So you make the commitment. Why? Because really and truly, you should only be talking about one woman like this. Like, I don't know, to be honest, how you're going to be talking about 2 women like this, 3 women like this, 4 women like this, 5 women. Like, how are you going to be saying these things? And generally, like, how are you going to say to 2 women, like, there's no spot on you? Like, you are, like, your smell of your garments is better than anything else. Like, do you get what I'm saying? Like this is, like, these are the kind of things you need to consider. Like, can you really genuinely say this to 2 women and really mean it? Like, some of the things we've talked about. Can you say this to 3 women, to 4 women, to 5 women, to multiple women, right? So notice this. This is in the confines. God's desire is to have this in the confines of one man and one woman, right? Married together. Now, what does he say? Again, the theme and topic of today's video is what? Husbands and wives, words and thoughts that a husband can say to save his marriage, to improve his marriage, to maintain his marriage, right? We're doing a 2-part series. Today we're going to be talking about husbands and ways that a husband should speak to his wife. Tomorrow we're going to be looking at, God willing, wives. And I'll give you a little teaser, the way a wife should speak about her husband, right? About, right? So notice the nuance in what we've got in store for you. But God willing, this will be a 2-part series, and ultimately, hopefully, both of them will be of benefit to you from a husband's perspective, but also from a wife's perspective. Just taking a little short segment from the book of Song of Solomon, right? But then at the same time, again, if you're not in this situation, if you're not married, all of these different kind of things, these are examples you can look at from a perspective of This is how I should be wanting to talk to my wife when I get to that period. This is how a wife should, when we get to tomorrow's series, part, God willing, of the series, talk about her husband, etc. Right? These are the kind of things. Seek Diligence has joined us. Good evening, in their word, and everyone in the comments. What's up, bro? God bless. Hope you're doing well. So think about it from that perspective, right? Like, these are things that you prepare yourself for. Okay, cool. One day I'll be a husband. One day one day you'll be saying, one day you'll be a husband. A woman will say, one day she'll be a wife, right? Etc. Now, at the same time, from the other perspective, okay, cool. Like, I know this person who's a husband. Like, let me share this with them. This will actually be beneficial to them. Like, because they could learn, even on a deeper level, some of the things you can say to a wife that can make her like really appreciate the things you're saying to her, right? Tomorrow, you can send this out to wives, and say, okay, cool. Like, and in both scenarios, you can send them to people that will one day be husbands and will one day be wives. But you can say tomorrow, okay, I'm going to send this to wives out there and say, okay, cool. Look, this is a way you can talk about your husband in order to uplift, maintain, and strengthen your marriage, right? Also, at the same time, look, I know one day, maybe it's going to be soon, you will be married, right? These are the kind of things for you to consider once you get to that point. These aren't necessarily the things you need to be saying now, but as you become married, as you basically become one, you join in life together, right? And share life together, hopefully the rest of your lives together, right? God willing, and by God's grace, these are the things you should shower your conversations with on a day-to-day basis. So what do we see next? Let's look at this. Let's go back to the scripture, right? And I said we're getting into some of the intense stuff now. Again, we're going to draw from previous things that have been mentioned previously, but there'll also be certain things forward as well which are quite significant. So what does he say? He says, he talks about, look, the smell of her clothes is like the smell of Lebanon, right? Then he says, a garden enclosed my sister spouse, a spring shut up, a fountain sealed. Some of these things, I'm not gonna lie, like, and again, you don't necessarily have to understand all of these things. Some of these things, you look at them and it's like, is he really saying this? Like, certain times I'm reading certain parts and I'm like, is he really saying that? Is he saying what I think he's saying, or am I just thinking too much into it, right? But that's what he's saying. He's likening his wife to a garden that's enclosed, so like a closed, protected, secure garden, right? And he says he likens her to a spring that's shut up. So a spring that's shut up is like a spring that's closed, right? But the spring can obviously like burst out, can open up. And he says a fountain that is sealed. So a fountain that is sealed, right, obviously has water inside. And a fountain that's sealed can ultimately be unsealed, right? If you understand that, let me know in the chat section so you understand what I'm saying. So notice what he's likened her to. He's likened his wife to a garden, right, that's closed. Now, let me even keep going, then I'll bring this back. So he says, thy plants, again, garden, right? What's in the garden? Plants, all these different kind of things, fruit, right? Thy plants an orchard of pomegranates. An orchard is like, similar to like an enclosure. It's like a specific region, like dedicated for certain things. So he's basically saying, look, your plants are like an orchard of pomegranates, like a specific section, location for pomegranates. And he says, look, with pleasant fruits, camp higher with spikenard. Then he says spikenard and saffron, calamus and cinnamon, with all trees of frankincense, myrrh and aloes, with all chief spices. And what does he say next? He says a fountain of gardens. Notice this, right? Notice what I'm reading now to what he said previously. A fountain of gardens, a well of living waters, and streams from Lebanon, right? So up here, well, let me take this step by step, right? Let me be led in the way I should go. So look what he says. He mentions all of these spices, right? He mentions these things and he ties it off by saying all the chief spices. What's interesting is many of these spices like things come up, right? Many of spices come up over in the scriptures, multiple different places, right? One place that stands out to me is, and I thought about this yesterday, is in Exodus, when God is giving Moses commandments. He's basically saying, look, I want you to make certain things. One thing he talks about is, he says, look, like, he says, I want you to make a specific ointment. And he mentions some of these spices, right? But notice there's different places where these things come up, and ultimately, like, we're talking about the best of the best, but ultimately, remember what he's saying. He's saying, look, you are like a garden enclosed. But notice what he says next, right? He started by saying, look, she's like a spring shut up, a fountain sealed. But notice what he says here, which was the last thing I said. He says, a fountain of gardens, a well of living waters, and streams from Lebanon, right? So some people may kind of consider and think, wait, is he saying this? Is he not saying this? But I feel like it becomes a lot more explicit in regards to what the response is. Because what does it say? And we'll read this and we'll read a little bit further, just to kind of tie in all of the context before we get into some of the questions and all those kind of things, right? Hopefully that are on topic. So it says, look, awake, O north wind, and come, thou south, right? Blow upon my garden. So obviously the woman is described as the garden, right? That was what Solomon was doing. Now she's saying, obviously she's saying her garden, so we know it's the woman speaking, but she's saying, look, north wind, south wind, come and blow upon her garden, right? Now what does she say? The spices thereof, right? What spices? The spices he just talked about, right? Which he was referencing her as ultimately. He says, the spices thereof may flow out. Let my beloved do what? Come into whose garden? Whose garden is she saying he should come into? Right? And it's interesting because you think about it from this perspective, right? It's like between a husband and a wife, these are the kind of things that should be freely spoken about. I remember weeks ago we did 2 sessions, one about dating unbelievers as a Christian and one just about divorce, right, based on Matthew 19:9. And it's interesting because some of the things we talked about Corinthians in, I believe, in both of those sessions. And I know the dating unbelievers, that video is in the description box, especially for those of you who aren't married, who are, into dating, into looking for spouses, all those kind of things. That session will be very beneficial for you to consider watching after this live session, right? But notice, it's like, one thing I was talking about is in regards to Corinthians, is where Paul is basically talking about, look, husbands and wives don't defraud each other, like, unless you agree. It's not, the husband doesn't say to the wife, look, you're not getting any, just keep it basic, right? And the wife doesn't say to the husband, you're not getting any, right? The only way that happens is the husband and the wife agrees. And notice he's described his wife in a specific way. And if you just follow the logic of what he said and what she's saying, from my vantage point, you can see explicitly from a basic, just literal perspective of what we're reading here, like what she's saying for him to come and do, right? And what does she wrap it off? Come into his garden, and she says, and eat what? His pleasant fruits. Notice this. Notice just the pronouns being used, right? But notice what she's saying. She calls it her garden, right? But then she says, let him come into his garden. And what he was talking about, she's like an enclosed garden, etc., pleasant fruit, spices. And what did she say? And eat his pleasant fruits. Now, one thing I didn't mention previously, which I wanted to mention, we can go back there just a little bit, is when he's talking about a garden enclosed, right? One way you can look at this is like, she's secure. Like, he's not thinking that loads of other people, like one person here, one person there, another person there, is basically coming to this garden, right? Like he said, look, it's an enclosure, it's enclosed. And as you continue, so just notice that, right? It's secure. It's not open or accessible for other people. But then she goes on to say, look, it's come into your garden and eat of your pleasant fruits, right? So the garden he's referencing, he's saying, look, this is what his wife is like. She isn't withholding from him, saying, look, you can't come into the garden, or these fruits and these spices that you like or you want to enjoy, you can't have them. She's saying, no, come in, right? Come in and enjoy your garden, your pleasant fruits. Now, as we continue, again, I mentioned this, we're going to go just a little bit forward, just to really tie off the context. What does he say? This is really significant. What does he says? He said, look, she's like a garden, right? With all of these spices and all of these pleasant fruits. Then she says, winds, south wind, north wind, blow upon the garden. Let all of these spices go out and let him come into his garden. Let him enjoy his pleasant fruits, right? Now, what does he say? I am come into whose garden? His garden, right? And what does he say? My sister spouse, I have gathered my myrrh with my spice. Why is this significant? This is significant if you follow the logic, right? What was he talking about previously? He was just talking about how his wife is like an enclosed garden and there's multiple spices there, right? Ultimately, Cosmere says raunchy, and it is raunchy indeed, right? But again, husbands and wives, these are the kind of things, like wife isn't withholding from the husband isn't withholding from the wife, etc., right? Notice this. Now he says, look, I've come into my garden, right? That's what he says. So husbands, go into the garden, right? But notice the nuance, and this is something powerful that I thought the Lord's putting on me right now, right? What did she say? Or the key thing you need to realize is, go into your garden. It is your garden, husbands, right? It is. She said that, he said that. But notice this. How do you want to go into your garden as a husband? You want to go into your garden with what? Permission, right? She's saying, come in. They're in agreement. Yes, you're coming in. Not, I'm bursting through into the garden, right? Like, again, I feel that the text is quite explicit, but I don't want to go even more specific, but I'll just put it like this. From the text, the way I read it, it's clearly just talking about husband and wife enjoying themselves, right? Pleasuring themselves together, right? Relations, etc. But notice, you go in with consent, right? It's not you just burst in, right? And again, this has linkage with what Paul talks about in Corinthians, ultimately, right? You don't defraud yourselves with one another. You basically, unless you're agreed. So you agree in all of this stuff, right? So just notice that, okay? Which is really significant. Now, so he's saying, he came into his garden, right? That's the first thing. Now, secondly, what does he say? He's gathered his myrrh and his spices, right? Because these are the things he talked about, right? In the garden, some of the spices. Now, what does he say? I've eaten, what did he eat? My honeycomb. What was the honeycomb a reference to? Write in the chat box if you remember what the honeycomb was a reference to when he talked about this previously. Then he says, I have eaten my honeycomb with my honey. What does he say? I have drunk my wine with my milk, right? So he's enjoying this. He's enjoying most of the things he's referenced to, right? Previously, ultimately. And it comes back by saying, eat, oh friends, drink. Yea, what does she say? Drink abundantly, right? Oh beloved. So notice, not only like, don't just come to the garden, right? Is what she's saying, and just pick a few fruit and enjoy some of these little spices. No, come, enjoy the garden abundantly, right? But who? Not everyone. Oh beloved, just one person. So as a wife, right? you don't be letting every husband, right, come in, right, or every, should I say guy, should I say, come into the garden, right? It's only specifically for one person. You have to keep yourself for that one person ultimately. And that's some of the things you can see here. You can see I wanted to basically wrap up the text there because I thought that that's a good place to kind of stop for the guy's perspective. We've got multiple examples, right, of what the scripture talks about in regards to how you can speak to your wife, how you can treat your wife, some of the pleasurable things that a husband and a wife can enjoy together ultimately again. And if you think about this as well, right, notice what Solomon did, notice what the husband did. He talked about this stuff and said, okay, cool, this is how I see you. And he says, look, it's like an enclosed garden, there's spices, there's fruit, all these different kind of things, etc. Right? It's a garden enclosed. Now he goes into the garden, and it's like, ultimately, many people say this, like from a guy's perspective, that is a husband's perspective, that is one way, like a husband likes to, or would, let's say for example, would showcase his love for his wife, right? In those particular settings, not only in how he speaks, but how he views her, and ultimately how he treats her, touches her, and they enjoy each other together, right? We'll see this from another perspective tomorrow, God willing, when we look at it from the wife's perspective, right? And we see some things that she'll present to the table. But notice, like, him entering the garden, enjoying the spices, enjoying the fruit, enjoying the honeycomb, all these different kind of things were things from his perspective. We'll see from the female's perspective tomorrow, God willing, and get into it as well from that perspective as well. So just notice that. Now, let me go into the chat. Let me see some of the things people have been basically getting up to in regards to just the specific topic. Hopefully it's a lot of stuff on topic, but let's basically see what else we basically have here, right? So let's jump to the chat and let me basically see, hopefully we can go all the way back up to the top and basically see some of the chat here. All right, so let's see what we have. If you've got questions on the topic, if you have comments on the topic, now is the time to put them in. God willing, we can work through some of these things. All right, and we can basically try and give even more benefit to those of you who are watching with me and those who are on the replay as well. All right, so Ikasmia said earlier on, this one's going to be fire eyes emoji, and let me know, like, was it fire? Like, what do you think? What else do we have? What else? Frandel M, I can't remember who I heard this previously, but he said, Israel, he needs this information, he's not even married, LOL. Well, hopefully this will be a benefit to you and like help you in regards to just your journey forward in regards to marriage by God's grace. Let's see. I mentioned this previously about the single series. I don't know, like, we'll see in it. Like, I didn't know I'd necessarily be talking about this at this particular time, but again, it's just about this, importantly, being just led by the Spirit ultimately, right? To just kind of talk about different things. Let's see. So somebody says there's something in the Song of Solomon in Hebrew text. He will tell it later on in the video. Interesting. Ecosmia just affirms what I'm saying about just those that are not married yet. It doesn't matter if you're not married yet. It's all preparation, definitely. There's lots of things in the Bible ultimately that you may not be at that stage yet in your life, but ultimately they can prepare you and help you, even just see forward in that regard and prepare you ultimately. Let's see. Mr. Somebody says marriage is half of your faith. I'm not sure what you mean by that. If you want to be more specific and highlight specifically what you mean. Ecosmios is back in the single series. Audio is fine. That's great. Then let's see what else. Let's see. Mr. Somebody asks a question. He says, in their word, where is the wisdom of Song of Solomon to be put in the Bible? It must be there is a wisdom of it. And it goes on. Well, ultimately, I know from my vantage point, I've mentioned it today, right? Why I see at least one reason why the book of Song of Solomon is in the Bible, ultimately, is accepted in the Bible. Others that are here with me, like, you comment in the chat as well, like, do you see a benefit? Like, it'd be great to even hear from wives' perspective as well. It's like, imagine if a wife can look at, and not in like a condescending way or a put down way, but if a wife can look at the way her husband compliments her now and what she may think of the next, like the compliments that would come after a husband, like studying the book of Song of Solomon and basically like going into these like deeper details, etc., and actually using this as like a help. So again, like from my perspective, hopefully that will help you answer the question. I think this is powerful in regards to just husbands and wives, right? Like, there's a lot of problems in different people's marriages today that just looking at this piece of text, like if a husband went and just studied the text we covered, and there's more of the book than this, right? Like, this could help many people's marriages in many different ways just by literally thinking about the way you speak to your wife and how you compliment her, etc. So let's see. Then you said you don't know Song of Solomon. You want me to tell you? Well, we've got into a little glimpse of that today, and hopefully that's been of benefit to you, for you just to see some practical things. I know there's many husbands out there, even I've kind of attested to certain things already, like there were certain times I was reading through the book, and I even said to my wife, like, certain times I was reading through, I was literally blushing, like I was like, how did he just say that? Like, and then it's like you think about those kind of things, and then you reflect on them, and you say, okay, cool, like, for a guy to say that about his wife, it's like he must really appreciate her and really love her. And then what did I do next? Obviously, we learn the Bible, right? So we're learning it, we read it, we study it. Then at the same time, I'm like, okay, we're living it. Okay, how can I take some of these things that are in the Bible and start applying them, living them? Like, okay, cool. Like, I can make more of an effort to try and compliment my wife. Why? Because it's not to say that these compliments are not in my mind and in my heart. Of course they are. Like, obviously I feel a certain way about my wife, but sometimes, and I mentioned this probably on my last stream, it's like we was talking about ultimately, like, at certain points I was talking about encouragement, and it's like I was saying, like, yeah, like, I appreciate encouragement when people say, like, look, well done, good, you did a good job, these kind of things. Like, I don't live for that, but ultimately, like, encouragement can help ultimately if you use it in the right way. So it's like, just by merely saying, you know what, this thing I'm thinking in my mind, or this thing that's in my heart, let me bring it out. Like, could me telling my wife today, look, you look beautiful, or I really appreciate and like the way you smell, like your smell is just all over my nose today, and it's just the only thing that my nose can pick up. Like, things like this, all of these different kind of things, like, these are things that they're just little boosts. The scripture talks about over and over again, like, the power we have in our mouths, in our tongues, is very powerful. The scripture talks about in Proverbs, death and life are in the power of the tongue, right? So, and it goes on. I can't remember how that particular sentence ends, but if someone wants to quote it, they can quote it, right? But just think about it from that perspective. I think it's Proverbs 13, if I remember correctly. But just notice that, right? Like, words we have are very powerful, so it can be very beneficial for many different reasons. Ultimately, let's see. Frando M says, Solomon, the wisest man in history. God definitely did bless him with multiple bags of wisdom that he utilized, as we can see, at least in one way, to make his wife feel a certain way, right? And again, notice this. I'm not going to say that anyway, but let's keep going. So Mr. Somebody says, the woman is not talking about a person that exists in her time. That's clear. Interesting. I'll reserve comment on that for now. God willing, tomorrow we can get into some of what she says and we can read from Mr. Somebody. But it's interesting, you said previously that you don't obviously know it's interesting you said you don't actually know. You want me to tell you about Song of Solomon, but you're making claims as if you necessarily know who this is actually talking about, right? So let's see. Seek diligence, thank you. Posted the proverb, was Proverbs 18, not 13. Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and they that love it shall eat the fruit thereof. Thank you for that. But notice that, right? Like, I'll reserve that for tomorrow. In fact, let me try and make a note of that, and I'll basically, if I remember and can kind of feel inclined and led to go that way, I'll bring that up potentially tomorrow. But let's see. What else do we have? Frando M says, did Solomon fall in love with strange women? Yes, he did. And this is actually what's actually interesting in regards to like the Song of Solomon, because one thing I mentioned previously, you may have picked this up, is I said something along the lines of, how can a guy like really, like, this isn't the kind of thing he'd be saying about many women. Like a guy who's married to 1, 2, 3, 4 women, this isn't the kind of thing that we kind of cover today. He's going to be basically mentioning to multiple women. It just wouldn't make sense, right? But yes, he did marry many women, and that was a big downfall in certain aspects of his life ultimately. But there's actually even allusions to this, to him marrying multiple people in the book of Song of Solomon as well ultimately, which gives us additional insights into some of those things as well. But let's see what else we have. All right. Let's see. All right, cool. Let's see. Mr. Somebody says Solomon has like 500 plus wives. The scripture talks about Solomon having about 700 wives and 300 concubines, ultimately, is what the scripture says. Let's see. So somebody says something about Song of Solomon chapter 5. I won't pick that up in today's live stream, considering we're going to be talking about that, God willing, tomorrow. So bring that back up tomorrow. Any statements or comments you've got about Song of Solomon chapter 5, Mr. Somebody, tomorrow. We may be able to get into that tomorrow, God willing. Let's see. Captain Bloodfire says Song of Solomon is about Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. It's debatable. Like, that's one of the things. I'm not going to make a big deal about that in regards to this 2-part series, because we're not necessarily like going through the book of Song of Solomon to like build 100% clear doctrine, right? We're just looking at certain aspects of it. So some people say it's the Queen of Sheba. It's hard. Well, it's from the scripture doesn't talk about Solomon marrying Sheba, firstly. So that's just one thing to consider. Other people believe it is Abishag, the Shunammite, right, who's mentioned in Kings, and is requested to, like, is asked of as a wife by Adonijah, Solomon's older brother. And certain things in the way Solomon reacts may suggest that, like, Solomon had a relationship with Abishag the Shunammite, and because of that that's why ultimately his brother was basically taken out, because it was basically his brother Adonijah basically trying to insult his brother, insult Solomon, who was the king. That's one thing to consider. The scripture talks about Song of Solomon, that is, talks about the Shulamite woman. That's why some people basically reference Abishag or the Shunammite and reference it like that to say that's the linkage. But ultimately, it's one of Solomon's wives that is clearly in focus in the book of Song of Solomon. Whether you have different views about the book of Song of Solomon as a whole, but clearly the basic literal reading of it is obviously him and one of his wives ultimately. So just to give some context, I read this previously as well about women loving compliments. Let's see. So somebody says it's a woman describing a person that she never met. She's waiting for him. What Sheba? I guess your reference returning response to Captain Bloodfire. I would like to talk about that tomorrow potentially, because it's more of what she says. But guys, girls, those of you in the live chat, right? Even those of you watching on a replay at a later date, you can leave it in the comment section below your thoughts. But my question is this, based on what Mr. Somebody's saying, this is a woman talking about a guy that's to come, right? Waiting. Well, from what we've read today, do you get that view? Because we clearly talked about, we can bring this back up again. What do we talk about? We talked about what? The guy saying he came into the garden, right? And he's enjoying the spices and the honeycomb and the fruit and the milk and the wine, right? And she's saying drink. She's not saying he will drink. She's saying drink, right? But notice what she also said here. She said, come into the garden. So does this sound like it's something that's happening in the future, or does this sound like something that's actually happening presently? I'm not sure. Well, I'm pretty certain that a view of it being a necessarily future thing is going to be hard for many people to try and basically pull out of the text ultimately, if you're going to look at it in a specific way, just for the record. But again, let's see what else we have. Frandel M says, Solomon, I guess, sinned against the Lord. He repented for his fornication. I believe we're talking about Solomon. If you're not talking about Solomon, Frandel, in that comment, just clarify. But yeah, he obviously had all these different wives that we've talked about. And again, Ecclesiastes is a really good book in regards to kind of highlighting Solomon's end outlook on life ultimately, and why it's more important to just basically focus on a relationship with God ultimately. Let's see. Mr. Somebody says, at Acres Mercy thinks they're actually in topic. Well, it's debatable. You're on the border at best, to be honest. Let's see. I think I read this previously. Solomon's wisdom is too much. Let's see. E Cosmere says, wow, so white and uniform teeth were even popular back then. Definitely. Let's see. Give me 2 seconds. Right, scriptures are getting referenced, but not from today's text, so I'm not going to touch on that right now. Let's see. Issachar Sky says she thought this book was about God's love towards us or something, just heard in passing. Well, that is one of the views, that is all spiritual, and it's allegorical of the New Testament allusions to the bride of Christ and the bride, right? And personally, I wouldn't say it's the most far-fetched. I don't believe it's the most far-fetched view. I don't necessarily, like, if I'm honest, that there are certain allusions that I could see, like I could like say to myself, well, I could see how this could apply to a certain degree. And even if that is the case, just one thing for you to consider, Issachar Sky. Even if that is the case, that doesn't mean that there isn't a physical application to it either, because that is one of the things we do see in the Bible ultimately in regards to prophecies. Generally, is anyway. I'll just leave it at that. But there are also certain things though that make it a little bit hard to view it that way, and maybe some of the things, like, again, I don't know, like maybe we may do a straight Bible study through it. One thing I can say, I know. I'll get this for you quickly if I can. Like, I'll give you a link. I know of a literal Bible study that's going to be going through Song of Solomon. So you may want to check this out if this is of interest to you, like seriously. Again, ultimately at the end of the day, you want to obviously read through the Bible for yourself ultimately and come to your own conclusions and just think about these things logically, right? But this is, share this with you now. This is a Song of Solomon series that's actually starting tomorrow, interestingly enough, by a guy named Alan Parr. Here's basically the first link to I guess what's going to be a weekly series, which would be interesting for you to potentially consider watching, basically. Again, I'm not like, I think it'll probably be like benefit if you want to just, I guess, I don't know what his conclusions are going to come to ultimately, but it'll be good to see different perspectives again. But I'd always say, like, definitely, like, watch other things if you want, read it for yourself and just see, like, if you want to take the view that you've heard, because I know you said you don't think you've read the book, so I don't think it definitely wouldn't be wise to come to a conclusion on the book before actually reading it. But you may have that view from what we've read today. You may read the whole book and be like, okay, yeah, I can see certain things. There are certain things, certain subtle allusions to other things, but then at the same time, like, this thing, like, is not compatible, etc., with that whole scenario. Some people will say, just from the mere, like, explicitness of certain things, like some of the things we covered today, entering the garden, enjoying the pleasant fruit, milk, honey, etc., like, why would God talk about that? We saw that already from Mr. Somebody earlier on. Like, he's like, what's the wisdom of this in the book? It's like, some people are just like, no, like, God wouldn't talk about that. God wouldn't talk about the bride of Christ in that manner, etc. So these are things for you to consider. Let's see. What else do we have? Let's see. Let's see. Cosmia says, yes, there are many examples of God's love and the relationship between us on a whole. Issachar Sky. Yeah, I kind of touched on that already. Let's see. Mr. Somebody's quoting Song of Solomon 5. Again, I'm not going to touch on that today. Bring it up tomorrow. We'll see if we get into that tomorrow. Let's see. Because Messi's posting Issachar Sky's question. I covered that already. Let's see. Fando M says, if Solomon complimented him, he would feel weird. What do you mean by that? If Solomon complimented you, if you want to add more context to that, so I know specifically what you're talking about. Let's see. I read this before. I'll read it again. Ecosmir said, Solomon left no stone unturned, nobody part left behind. Frando M's asking what's Solomon's wife's name. Well, again, we talked about multiple wives. We talked about some different scenarios. Some people, like Captain Butterfly mentioned, look, he believes it's Queen of Sheba. Some people take that view. Some people say, look, they can't prove from the scripture he's married to Queen of Sheba. Some people say it's Abishag, like I mentioned. Some people just say it's one of his wives, like his favorite wife, the one he loved most, etc. So we don't know for sure, but yeah, I'll just leave it at that. Again, we've got more references to chapter 5, which we're not talking about today, so I'm not going to touch on those right now. Let's see. Yeah, because we're talking about the reference to Shulamite woman in Song of Songs as well. Let's see. I answered that one about what's his wife's name. Mr. Somebody says, I in that word, he's pretty sure God wouldn't speak about breasts. Why is this in the Bible? You're just saying you want the wisdom behind this, please. You're just learning here. Well, it's interesting that that's your viewpoint, because why wouldn't God talk about breasts? If God has created women with breasts, and yeah, if God has created women with breasts, like, why wouldn't he talk about it? And especially if men and women are married, like, why wouldn't it's like saying God wouldn't talk about sex, or God wouldn't talk about why wouldn't God talk about these things? If men and women need guidance, or if God's saying, well, look, I'm going to give them guidance on certain things, so they can't say they don't know how to do these things. It's like, you can think about it from that perspective. That's multiple. I've given you at least 2 reasons why God would do that. But then at the same time, you have to notice as well that, like, how often in the Bible does God talk about this kind of stuff? That's another thing to consider. So it'd almost be weird, I'd think, if he didn't talk about this. Like, again, it shows like the personal nature of God. Like, God is willing to touch multiple topics. Like, why would it goes back to like what I was saying, like, is God embarrassed? Like, is God shy or something that he can't talk about the woman's breast if he created it? Like, do you think he created a woman's breast and closed his eyes and said, look, I'm not gonna look, or as he's fashioning it, a woman basically that's pleasing and acceptable in Adam's eyes ultimately? So why wouldn't you talk about that? Yeah, hopefully that helps. Issachar Sky says it's deep. Let's see, there's some stuff off topic that I'm not trying to get into. Let's stay on topic. Issachar Sky says the mention of frankincense and myrrh makes me think of Jesus. Yeah, and that's again, we kind of talked about this already. There are certain things in Song of Solomon that will make you think, like, okay, this reminds me of this reminds me of this. And there are times like that in the scripture where the shoe fits. As they say, there are times in scripture where there are different allusions, but it doesn't fit, right? And obviously frankincense and myrrh are allusions to at least one allusion is the wise men that came to Jesus, basically, and they gave him 3 gifts: frankincense, myrrh, or gold, frankincense, and myrrh, right? So some people say, well, there's 2 out of 3. Some people say it's close enough. Some people say, well, it's not all 3 of them, etc. Again, these are the kind of things you just look at, you know, imagine. These are certain things you look at and basically determine and say, okay, do these things line up in a way that's acceptable to me, or do they not line up, etc. Okay. What else do we have? So somebody says he's pretty sure why no Jew or Christian or even the pagans ever complain about this in his time. Again, I guess that's an off-topic thing, so I won't get into that. Frandel's back in Issachar Sky's point about the frankincense and myrrh. Read that comment. Issachar Sky says you have to look at this with spiritual eyes, not fleshly. Yeah, I guess that's true. You obviously, ultimately, you read all of the scripture with spiritual eyes, and you pray for spiritual understanding. At the same time, one thing you have to remember as well is, just because you take a literal reading of something and not necessarily the most spiritual reading, that doesn't mean you're not looking at it with spiritual eyes as well, just for the record. Again, everything has to fit ultimately. I'll just leave it at that. Mr. Somebody says, all right, so let's skip over these that are not on topic. Let's see. Frandel M says he would like to marry a woman who has meekness, but that's hard to find. Ultimately, commit it to prayer, and I don't mean necessarily pray that God gives you a wife with meekness. Ultimately, remember I mentioned this previously, right? Let me know in the chat if you remember when I was talking about it earlier on in the live stream. We know, I used the example of myself and my wife. Like, we think we know what we want best, but God knows you better than yourself. So I'd say pray. And these were some of the things I did. I was like, I'm not focused on a woman. Like, that was my mindset at the time. Like, God, I'm focused on you. If you bring me a wife, etc., then I'm down. If not, I'm focused on you. I'll let you handle that stuff. Right. And ultimately, I thought that was the best decision. I didn't necessarily handle everything the best ultimately, but still in retrospect, I can see that just committing it to prayer, allowing God to work, and not me trying to go out and find the most meekest woman and all these kind of things, because that may not be what you need at the point you meet your future wife and obviously marry her. Like, she may end up like that, but that may not be necessarily what you need at that time. So just commit it to the Lord, and ultimately He will deliver you something, even if you don't necessarily see the full beauty at the time. As time goes on, if you continue to stay faithful, right, then ultimately it'll be like, it'll work out for you. Ultimately, just trust God, have faith, right? So, and again, one thing I'll say to the mods as well, if there's anything about just other stuff that's off topic, you can remove it in advance of me getting there. And if people are jumping off topic and stuff like that later on, like at present chat, then obviously you can time them out, etc. Let's see. Let's see what else we have. And Ecosmin said, at Frandel M, who can find a virtuous woman? Question mark, for her price is far above rubies, quoting Proverbs 31. And she says, it's better to let the Lord choose for you. Trust that He knows what you need. Definitely. Basically, that's basically what I just said. So hopefully that helps. And Frandel said, thanks for the advice. Let's see. Frandel M says, in that word, that you, bro. That's you, bro. I understand. I don't know what you're specifically talking about. Just let me know in the chat right now. Let's see. Ecosmia says, it's scripture. God is working on your behalf behind the scenes, even though you can't see it, as He's readying your spouse, be readying yourself. Very true. So the way, ultimately, just to say it in another way, but just basically hit home on the same point, right? God is preparing your spouse for what you need, but at the same time, like Ecosmia is putting this way, you ready yourself. I was putting this way, allow God to prepare you for your spouse, basically. So not only is the wife, for example, when God brings the wife to you, you're ready, right, for the wife, but also when God brings the husband to the wife, like allow God to work in your life so you can be ready for her, basically, and you can start off on the best track possible. Ultimately, let's see. The Supreme King says, yes, he likes Song of Solomon, and yes, he's read it before, and they put a little smiley emoji. Interesting. Yukasmia says, great. So she's sure a lot of compliments are going to be going to their spouse's way at some point in the future or in due season. Let's see. So Supreme King says, yep, definitely at some point when he's a husband, he's going to be looking forward to getting into some of the stuff we've kind of talked about today and some of the other stuff in Song of Solomon as well. In regards to speaking to his wife, let's see. Frandel M says, Pecan said evening, definitely evening to you. Frandel M says he's not even married yet. This is the best advice from the Word of God. And it's like, again, like it's powerful that he says this, because again, one of the things that's come up is the book like this beneficial? And I think we've already seen in some of the things I've talked about and some of the things other people have talked about, like even some of the views of some people have of the book, like whether you take it just strictly man and a woman, whether you take it as like a more spiritual kind of outlook on the book, whether you take it a complete different view, which to some of the things we've discussed in today's video, and some of the different views and some of the views that have been mentioned. If you're completely different to that, it's like different people see benefits in it in different ways. So let's see. But it's great to hear that obviously a young man can look at this and say, okay, cool, like this is like great advice from the Word of God in regards to how to think about going forward, communing and conversing with your wife, and how to basically talk to her, how to basically have conversations with her, etc., and all those kind of things. Iskar Sky says, one day 42 and still waiting. Well, it's just keep trusting. Like ultimately, I'm certain if God has someone for you, like he'll definitely fulfill on that. Okay, just don't hinder yourself. Ultimately is what I'd say. Just trust in him, allow him to just work. Yeah, ultimately, again, we talked about this before. I talked about this for myself. I talked about this in regards to advice for Frandel, like, and anyone else who's in that kind of scenario. It's like, I guess you'd be in that scenario as well, ultimately. The Lord knows what's best for you, ultimately. We don't always necessarily understand that or see this from a physical perspective, but ultimately, when we allow the Lord to work and to complete the work that he has in store for us, if we're truthful, ultimately, we'll see it in the end. Just, okay, God, this is why you did this, or this is why you did that, etc. So let's see. What else do we have? So Ecosmir brings up something interesting, and this is what I was thinking of as well. Abraham and Sarah waited a lot longer and with abounding patience. So she prays that for your life also, Issachar Sky. Issachar Sky says, you're not seeing it with spiritual eyes but the flesh. That's a fair point. I have no issue if someone sees this more spiritual or like sees that whole element to it. One thing I'll say, I kind of mentioned this already, like having read through it, studied it a few times, I can see why some people see Jesus in it. Not to say I don't, but I mentioned this previously as well. This isn't a step-by-step study through it in more, which is more typical to me. This is more of a straight actionable look. We're just jumping straight in, getting into it in regards to just some solid advice. So it's really like not to the deeper layers of doctrine that I would actually get into if I was actually breaking down a book, for example. So that wasn't really my focus or emphasis in regards to this study. It's not going to be about, oh, is it this or is it that? We're just looking at some of the basic things we see in the text which are undeniable, whether you think this is more spiritual, etc. Just for the record, let's see some more things that are on topic. Ecosmia says the Hall of Fame of Faith, as they call it in Hebrews, will encourage you also. Again, that's one of my videos recently that I really enjoyed doing and I've been pumping up heavily. So definitely, yes, that cloud of witnesses really does encourage you a lot in all different scenarios. So let's see. Issachar Sky says she does, but she doesn't date non-Christians, which is, in my opinion, a really good strategy. If you're not going to marry an unbeliever, really, you shouldn't, in my opinion, be wasting time dating an unbeliever, to be honest. She says, all in God's timing. He probably wants her to write her books first, lol. Well, again, if she says her life has always been strange, as if God has set her aside for some reason. What do you mean by set you aside? It'd be interesting to go deeper into. But yes, one thing I say is, like I've said it before already, before seeing the comment, God's timing is definitely the best. And on top of that, like you've talked about your books previously as well, and it's like, if that's the case, write your books. Like doing the things God desires of us to do will always fast track the scenario. And I'm saying fast track in quotation marks because ultimately you can never work faster than God's timing. So you're only ever going to be working at the pace God knows you can work at, and a lot of the time we work at a pace slower than what God wants us to work at. Obviously, you've mentioned your books. I've mentioned my books previously and how I've kept them on the shelf for a long time. Those books that I've talked about specifically are in the description box if you want to get them for free. Paid options there as well. Either way, hopefully they bless you. Let's see. Let's see. Let's see. Randall quoted something from Solomon, Song of Solomon chapter 5. I'm not going to get into that today, like I mentioned previously, but hopefully maybe tomorrow, God's willing. Issachar Sky says she just sees Jesus in all of this. Okay, that's fine. No, there's no, like, yeah, it's fine. Let me leave it at that. What else do we have? Let's see. Let's see. Ecosmere says lips equals honey pot. Definitely. So Solomon was going in. What else do we have? Issachar Sky says if you don't have the spirit, then the Bible won't make sense. Definitely. It's not a physical book. You can read it physically, and what I mean it's not a physical book is I'm just basically adding on to the emphasis of what Issachar Sky is saying. You can read the Bible like plainly. It's not like you can't read the words. You can read the words, but the deeper layers to the Bible will you'll miss. It's basically like peeling an onion, basically. As you peel more and more layers, your eyes become more sensitive to what the onion is actually like emitting out, just for the record. Let's see. Issachar Sky's quoting Isaiah. Let's see. Let's see. Morse chapter 5, which we're not getting into today, so I'm not going to talk about that again. So somebody's question is brought up, but I know this is on the next chapter. So again, like I said, I'm not going to talk about that today. Let's see. Randall M says the biggest downfall of Solomon. I guess you're referring to multiple wives, which definitely is. And we talked about that on a previous stream as well, about ultimately God saying to the king not to multiply wives and not to multiply loads of wealth, etc. Because these are the things that will turn you away ultimately. Things we see corroborated in the New Testament as well. Let's see. I see a little Hebrew class going on here. Let's see. Let's see. It's a class guys you just heard in passing. Okay, I guess you're referring to it being about Jesus. Yeah, I think even I've read more so before when I read Song of Solomon previously. Again, like it's not hard to see certain things and come to like similar conclusions. I'm not here to say one way is right or wrong per se. I believe every book in the Bible shows Jesus in one way, shape, or form anyway. So it's not, I don't think it would be the most far-fetched thing anyway. So let's see. Let's see. Let's see. What do we have? Frando M says, I end the word thank you. Or just thank God ultimately. Let's see. Ecosmia says, he's here to distract and steal the word before you can hide it in your heart. Ultimately talking about the parable of the sower. Let's not be distracted, but rather pray that the word he hears is not falling on deaf ears. Let's see. Yeah, guys, like girls, like I say it like regularly, like don't get distracted by other things. Like focus on the topic of discussion at hand. That's how you get the most benefit, not focusing and then veering off. Like the scripture ultimately Ecos is alluding to is powerful because it shows you that this is one of the ways that the enemy will basically steal the seed that's being sown on your heart. Like you're talking about something, you're thinking about something, you get diverted one way, shape, or form. Like stay on topic. That's the best way for you to basically learn these things. Like these, like the enemy doesn't come with anything new or anything like diverse. It's things that we've heard before, seen before. Ultimately, we know that Christ has power, has prevailed. So ultimately, there's nothing new under the sun. I mentioned this earlier. All of these things have been rebutted and taken down and destroyed already. So like I said multiple times, this time, you don't think I want to say certain things certain times, but at the same time, I'm just like, look, let me focus, let me stay on topic, let me help the people that are here listening to help them get the message that I believe God wants them to get in whatever way it's supposed to bless them specifically. All of these other things are just distractions. Just ignore them. And if it persists, people will get timed out, people will get blocked, it's whatever. All right. So just focus on the topic. Let's see. Issachar Sky says she does sometimes. God makes you wait a little. True, right? That is true. Sometimes it makes you wait. Let's see. Issachar Sky says she means having the spirit and trying to understand the Bible without the spirit. Okay, just I guess adding more to what she said previously. Let's see. Excuse me. This is somebody. Obviously, I kind of said this to you previously. You're not the only one. So I haven't been biased. I've removed other people's comments ultimately who talked about the next chapter. Just because we're talking about Song of Solomon, it doesn't necessarily mean we're going to dive into and jump into every part of Song of Solomon. This isn't an outlook and over like a study like that what we're doing. We're talking about a specific topic in regards to Song of Solomon. And this goes to everyone, okay? Just for the record, he's just the one mentioning it, but asking a question. But ultimately, like, ask questions, bring comments on what we've talked about today, not things that are after or before necessarily, etc. Issachar Sky says it's just something she senses in her spirit that she's not married yet and God has kept her for some purpose and she has seen him keep the wrong people from her or taking them out. Okay, cool. And again, you mentioned it previously as well. Sometimes God makes people wait. Generally, God's going to make you wait though as well for a specific reason. So maybe it might be that God's allowed you to realize in all of these situations that he's pulled the wrong people away from you, and you will know specifically when he puts the right person potentially in front of you and stuff like that. Let's see. Let's see. Random says, good thing we have the Bible as the guide, definitely. Let's see. Let's see. Let's see. Yukasmir says, yes, I pray we won't be distracted and miss what the Lord has for us. And it's like, I did a video about this, funny enough. Let me do this. I did a video about this recently, a couple months ago. It's recent months, about the parable of the sower, right? I've done a video previously, a live session previously about the parable of the sower. I've also let me just get it for you and I'll share it with you, because this is actually a powerful video for a number of reasons, because it talks about this very specific point, right? Because we said, yes, you praise that won't be distracted to miss what the Lord has for us. Just read that again, because ultimately at the end of the day, it's like, when you think about like the scriptures, right? Here it is. When you think about the scriptures, what you need to realize is many of us like many of us like take the enemy for granted, and we think that like he doesn't, like we think he's gonna work in a certain way. I'll just put it like that. And what you need to realize is, from the very moment, right, you open up the Bible, from the very moment you turn on a video, right, about the Bible, right, like he is actively trying to distract you. He doesn't want you to receive anything from the word, anything. Some people think that he's waiting until the message is ended. Yeah, I've just got the message, so now he's going to come and attack. No, he's attacking from the very first second. Like from the very first second, social media, text messaging, phone calls, everything, anything you can think of, he'll use bad things if he can get into like fellow Christians and use them as a distraction. Look, notice, like there are some people that distract. There are certain times where it's other people that are distracting, that are being allowing themselves to be distracted, and then ultimately distract other people. So you think about it from that perspective, that in itself, you just saying, you know what, I need to respond to this, even though it's not on topic, like that's a way you can get distracted from actually learning what's actually being shared with you. So you have to realize the nuance and that, think about this. Okay, cool. Just think about this. This is what the video talks about hard. It's like, don't make the mistake of thinking that like you're fighting someone who's fighting clean. He's not fighting clean. His goal is to steal from you, to kill from you, and to destroy you. Those are the three objectives. He's literally, the scripture talks about, he's accusing you day and night. He wants to steal, he wants to kill, and he wants to ultimately destroy. So just think about this. Answer yourself this question. And as you go about just day-to-day life, right, you'll be asking yourself like, okay, look, like, how could the enemy be trying to steal, kill, and destroy from me in this video I'm watching today, this live stream? Ask yourself that question. And as you think about this, just focus and watch what happens. You'll start to notice certain things that are happening when you watch videos, when you're in live streams, when you open up the Bible and you start reading. Ask yourself the question, how is the enemy going to try and steal from me, try and kill from me, and try to destroy me? And just start thinking about it. As you read through the scriptures, just notice what starts to happen. You become more wise to these scenarios, and you realize, okay, cool, you've been thinking about him a certain way, thinking he will come and attack you in a certain way, but he's even more deeply ingrained. Okay, like he's smart. He'll know. He knows a lot of ways how to get to people, and if you allow him to get to you, like ultimately you're gonna miss it. I'll just leave it as that. Frandel says, greatest is he that lives in us than in the world. Definitely. Frandel M says, Satan attacks the mind too, planting seeds. Yes, he does. Sometimes it's just a little seed he'll try and plant, right? He'll try and plant a little seed in your mind that he'll hope that will try and flourish and sprout out later on. But at the end of the day, it's like if you're not constantly refreshing yourself with new word and prayer, all these kind of things, you'll be susceptible. Issachar Sky says he tries to steal the word once it's heard. And imagine that. I'm saying words every single second. So notice that, and that's what I say in the video. It's not after all of my words are finished. We'll be going for like nearly 2.5 hours, right? 2 hours and 20 minutes today, currently. It's not after I shut this down. It's from the first second when I said, hey everyone, today we're going to be talking about Song of Solomon 4. We're going to be talking about husbands, and how they should talk to their wives. How should they think about their wives? And immediately people are going to think, well, they're not married, they're not a husband, so this doesn't apply to me. They're not this, etc. Right? These are already the things coming from the get-go to kind of distract you. But again, we talked about this. How do you know you're not hearing a message because you need to give this to someone else? Like when we start thinking, when we just remove ourselves from this equation and say, look, okay, let's not just think about ourselves. Let's think about people around me, people in close proximity, right? Like, if everything's become different, because even though I'm a man, I'm not a woman, right? There may be something the Lord wants me to hear about like a woman, so I can share that with my wife, like my daughter, my sisters, right? Sisters-in-laws, etc. My mum, all these different people, like friends, someone I meet on the road, right? A woman that may be in a live chat. So, like, don't just think about yourself. There's multiple reasons why God will have you hear something, even if you think, how does this relate to me? If it's in the scripture, all of it relates to you, one way, shape, or form, right? I'm not saying everything, like, literally is applicable to you, but it doesn't mean it can't benefit you, right? So just understand that, like, Franda M says we must not fall into Satan's devices, and this is very true, ultimately. Like, there's always going to be distractions, there's always going to be thoughts and thinking about all these different things, and at the same time we have to combat those things and just be mindful and say, okay, cool, look, we know your tricks, we know what you're up to, we know you may send certain people here to try and distract and to pull the conversation in a different place, but at the same time it's like focus, grow. One thing you have to realize is the enemy is doing something for a specific reason, but he doesn't know. He thinks, look, I'm going to kill, I'm going to destroy this person, I'm going to steal, right? But God is like, okay, look, this is how the devil is trying to do something. Like, he's not seeing later on how this is going to be even bigger benefit. I talked about this on the last stream about Job. The devil immediately went to try and wipe out Job, thinking that Job would curse God and lose his faith. But God knew from the get-go, Job doesn't just serve me, he doesn't believe in me just because I bless him and I'm protecting him all these years. That's why God can say, okay, look, I've protected this guy for how long, I've blessed him, he's supremely rich. I can remove my hand, right? God didn't have to have his hand there in the first place, but God said at one point, okay, cool, let me remove my hand from this particular situation for a season and watch this whole blessing that what happens to Job's whole life brings for so many other people. Do you think if the devil could go back, he would have decided and said, you know what, let me not actually do all this stuff to Job? You don't think he would go back and say, I wouldn't do it? Because now he can see, and as more days go by, he can see even further. Okay, cool. That thing I did then, which I thought was actually going to be to his benefit, has turned into his detriment, largely, because there's so many people that continue in the faith because of what happened to Job, right? So just notice that there's things that will come that the enemy will be thinking, okay, look, this is negative, but the Lord can use all situations and make them good, and then allow you to see the good in those scenarios ultimately as well. So just don't allow yourself to get distracted. Don't be veering off into all of these different topics in these situations. There'll be times we'll talk about this. Imagine not all of the talk, there was multiple conversations talk about chapter 5. What did I say? God willing, we're going to be talking about that tomorrow. So are you telling me 24 hours is such a big deal? Like, this is what I'm talking about. It's not like I said we're not going to talk about that chapter tomorrow. God willing, we're going to talk about it. We'll be able to address many of these things, God willing. But today is about chapter 4. So understand that. Just notice, this is something that's coming up, but for some reason, people are getting ahead of themselves. People are allowing themselves to get distracted about things that's happening tomorrow. And this is a big problem. So many of us, what do? Case in point, like just notice, right? Notice this stuff. Like, notice all of these things, right? Like, God will say things, will show certain things, and then what happens? They begin to manifest. They'll show themselves, right? We're talking about something specific, then all of a sudden there's distractions. There's this. Like, there's something obviously in what we covered today which is significant for certain people. Certain people have mentioned how this has been beneficial. Certain people won't mention, right? They'll just take it away and it will bless them, right? And I thank God it will bless them anyway, even if they don't say anything. But just notice that, right? Like, so many of us love to focus on tomorrow when you need to just focus on today. I mentioned this in the last stream again. Like, and I'll even give you the link to yesterday's last live stream as well. It was a powerful stream in many ways, right? Ultimately just about following God. But ultimately, notice this. I gave the example. People are focusing on the penthouse when they should be focusing where they are. And some of them are in the lobby on ground floor. Okay. So just notice that. Stop focusing on things that are not for you right now. And just focus on today. Focus on what's here for you right now. Let's see. Let's see. So let's do this. Any questions? Any more questions on regards to what we looked at today? Not what we talked about discussing tomorrow. Right. Today. And for those of you who've gone into tomorrow already, right, based on your time zone, today's live stream, the current live stream right now. Let's see. Randall quotes Matthew, don't worry what you're wearing or eating, worry about the kingdom of righteousness, kingdom and its righteousness, and all those things shall be added unto you. And it's very true, right? Like, don't allow these things to kind of distract you. So somebody says in their word, yeah, who wrote Song of Solomon? Answer me this question. What does that have to do with what we covered today? How does who wrote Song of Solomon? What does that have to do with what we covered in regards to how a husband should talk to his wife? Can you see what I'm talking about, guys and girls? Who wrote Song of Solomon has no bearing on how a husband should talk to his wife. But even things that seem to be, right, on the topic are not really on the topic. They're just a distraction. And this is the point I'm making. Like, ultimately, who wrote the words really has no significance. And I mentioned previously today, this isn't a step-by-step through the book of Song of Solomon. I gave you a link. And imagine this. Can you imagine the irony, right? God knows what he's doing. I quoted I posted a link earlier on in the live stream of the guy Alan Parr, right? He's got a channel, The Beat, right? Makes quite good content, right? And he's doing a Song of Solomon Bible study, right? Step by step by step. I said today, this isn't step by step through the book of Song of Solomon. We're looking at two examples, two-part series, one on husbands, one on wives. Right? And again, look what is coming up next. Like, just so you can see for yourself, think about everything I just said and see what's happening. Now, what's Mr. Somebody saying? Well, he's not married, so he can't ask questions now. So, did I not mention about people that are not married? Again, even when he said he was going, what did I say? There's people out there, stop being selfish and thinking about yourself. Just because you're not married, how do you know there's not something here today that you're going to use to benefit someone else that is married? How do you know this isn't to prepare you for when you get married? Right? This is the point I'm talking about, guys and girls. Don't allow yourself to get distracted by things that aren't on topic, and even things that may even seem like they're on topic, but they're not on topic. All right? So how do you know? This is why you always have to think deeper on these things. How do you know? By seeing how a husband talks to his wife and the pleasantries he bestows on his wife doesn't make you think, okay, cool. This is how a husband speaks to his wife. Well, how should a dad talk to his daughter? Or how should a dad talk to his son? Or how should a dad talk to his friend? Right? Like, if you want to just keep things on a surface level, you'll stay on the surface. And the moment any Christian looks at the Bible and says, this piece of text is not beneficial to me, you're in a problem. because now all of a sudden that means, well, you don't need to read it. And if you say, look, I don't need to read it, that means you feel there's no blessing for you in that piece of text. But the whole Bible is beneficial for you in multiple different ways, right? So let's see. God is good, guys. God is good, girls. All right, let's do this. One last point I'll leave you with, which I think is actually quite powerful, right? What's one thing this could do, right? For those of you that are not married. What we cover today could be an example to show you maybe why you're not married. Maybe why marriage is something far away from you. Excuse me. Some people, this could say to you, because there's two things, so you get an additional blessing here. You're close to marriage, right? So notice when you read the Bible, like there's different ways you could look at it. There's different things you can use and different ways you can apply certain things to actual situation. So reading something like this about husbands, again, can show you this is why maybe this is why marriage doesn't seem close to me. Is because my view on a potential wife is completely far-fetched from this. And I'm not interested in any way in complimenting my wife as a husband, etc. All those different kind of things, right? This could show you, okay, look, these are the things, these are exactly what I've been thinking of. And this is just God confirming to me that, okay, look, something's happening very soon. So hopefully this has helped you, guys and girls. Hopefully this has been a blessing. I'll probably wrap it up right here. And thanks everyone for tuning in. Those of you who have been helping, those of you, even if you've been hindering, like I said previously, the Lord can use all different situations to help people grow. And I hope that just as Christians, all of us ultimately, Christian and non-Christian, will use these scenarios to get better in life ultimately. And to not allow ourselves to miss the blessings the Lord has in store for us. So, yeah, on that note, thank you everyone for tuning in. If you haven't already, make sure you smash the like button, share it with friends, family that you think this can be beneficial to, married, not married. And yeah, guys, see you all soon. God willing, we'll be back later on today now for me with part 2 of this series about words and thoughts you can use to save your marriage. We looked at the husband's perspective today. Later on today, or yesterday, later on today now, we're going to get into the second session, which is about a wife's perspective, etc. Okay, so see you all soon. Thanks, take care. See you on the next one.